Welcome to Calm Down with James Eade. I'm James Eade, and I'm trying to calm down today in a beautiful afternoon in San Francisco. The reports of San Francisco's demise have been greatly exaggerated. It's doing great. Come down and check it out. I can tell you today is a great day to be in San Francisco. Inland in California, it's still scorching hot, but coastal cities like San Francisco are great. So, what are we doing to calm down today? And why are we so uptight in general? I want to talk to everybody about calming down because we should be calm. We make the best decisions when we're calm. Our behavior is best when we're calm. But we're agitated so often, anxious or agitated constantly. And how do we know, hey, wait, I'm not in a good space to make a good decision? I want to calm myself down. How do I do it? The best way to do this is to know beforehand what you're going to do. Because when you're anxious and agitated, you're not going to make a good decision about how to calm yourself down. So know beforehand what it is you're going to do. I talk about myself. My go-to is deep breathing. I practice it in the morning when I wake up, and I practice it again whenever I find myself getting anxious or intense or anxious about anything. It doesn't matter. And we don't judge each other's anxiety about, yours is valid, mine isn't. No, everybody gets anxious for whatever reason. Everyone has to have a go to on how to calm down. And especially people that are struggling with addiction and recovery, people that are in recovery know that they can't afford to have resentments, to get angry, to be upset. It's not in their best interest. It's not in their long term best interest to continue to be sober, clean and sober. And they have to be able to calm themselves down. But everybody can benefit from these types of things. And what works for me may not work for you, but my go to, deep breathing, works for a lot of people. So try something, and it can be just a matter of trial and error. What do you do when you're anxious? How do you calm yourself down? So there's a lot to talk about, and I want to talk mostly to the people struggling with addiction and recovery. And every week we try to talk about a little bit about how you can deal with your situation. Know that you're not alone. Lots and lots of people are struggling. There's so many families that are affected by this in the country. It's really an epidemic that's going around the country. Everybody's affected by it, or everybody knows somebody who is affected by it. The main thing that I want you to know is there's nothing to be ashamed about. Addiction catches up with people slowly. You don't wake up one day and say, I'm an addict. It comes at you on a slow pace. You may be making bad decisions and doing things that you probably know better than you shouldn't do and all that kind of stuff, but it can creep up on you. Now, it's not like April I was an addict and May I wasn't, and or vice versa, because recovery follows addiction, and you never can say, I'm done. I'm not fully recovered. I'm in the process of recovering still from whatever it was that I was suffering from. And addiction comes in many forms. And so again, we don't judge each other. We try not to anyways. We don't say your addiction is serious, mine is trivial. No, everybody that has an addiction that is changing their lives for the worse. And they're trying to find ways to get out of it. And the one thing that I will say is that in our society, you're often shamed for having an addiction. And I want to tell everyone that this is a bad vibration. I've never made a good decision based on shame. Now, we were all taught shame when we were children, one way or another, to control our behaviors. And still, society will try to shame you as though they think that this will change your behavior. But we know that that's not true. Shame doesn't help us. We have to rise above shame. Shame is pulling us down. Shame is a vibration at a lowest level. It doesn't produce anything creative. It doesn't produce anything that's good for humanity. No, shame is not a vibration you want to be at. But how do you change your vibration? Well, everyone has that power and potential to change their vibration at any time. You can just picture a thought in your head, picture something that's visibly in your mind, a wonderful idea, a source of energy, something like it could be the sun, it could be a star in the solar system, it could be a source beyond all of those. And think about, okay, how do I change I want to be kind. I want to be loving and kind. Now, I don't wake up loving and kind, but every morning I can change my vibration. I give thanks for being reminded of my ability to change my vibration. And I try to be loving and kind. And I picture green energy entering into my heart chakra, my heart space, and I say, I am loving. And then I picture blue energy entering into my throat chakra space. And I say, I am kind. Because when I was unkind, it usually was something I would say. So to me, the green energy and the blue energy and visualizing it calms me down. And the body can calm the mind can calm the body. And when I find myself relaxing, and I can relax and think, why can't I just meet someone and treat them in a loving and kind way? If I'm walking down the street and I see somebody, after I've done this, I smile at them. This was 10 years ago. I wasn't smiling at anyone, but now I am. And more often than not, they smile back. This is one of the things that you can do. But today's lesson, if you have any lesson to take away from that, is shame's not part of my life. And if you feel ashamed and you come in contact with me, it's going to be like matter and antimatter, because I don't tolerate shame in my body. And if you get into my sphere of influence and you have shame, there's going to be a dramatic confrontation between that. So please don't feel shame, because I don't want that to happen between us. And when we do come into contact, maybe you can give me your shame, because I can take it. I can take your shame away, but it's best if you give it away yourself. Now, the next segment of Calm Down. Oh, excuse me, I made a mistake. I wanted to talk about why I do calm down in general. And yes, it's to talk to addicts in recovery, and it's also to talk to everybody that's suffering from their lives are being affected by not being able to calm down. And it's partly a service to humanity, of course, but I do have an ulterior motive. I want to sell this book. This is Freedom by James Eade. I'm James Eade. This is my book. I want you to buy it because it's my story. It's my story of how I bent the knee to the tyrant addiction and how I stood up again and walked my path in recovery. But I have a friend, a senior correspondent from Los Angeles, and I would like to turn this show over to Rick Rosner and hear what's bugging him today. Thank you very much for tuning in.
Welcome to this segment of Calm Down with James Eade. I'm James Eade, and it's hard to calm down sometimes when all the news that you hear is upsetting. Now, one of the ways that I deal with it is by not paying as much attention as perhaps I should. That's why I have a senior correspondent report to us once a week about what is going on in the world and what's upsetting him. His name's Rick Rosner, and I want to introduce him now. Rick, hello.
Hello. So we're in a flight path, so you might hear airplanes flying over. My bitching is not going to be about that, but I'm just letting you know.
All right. Okay, so go take it away, Rick.
All right. So if you remember your Bible, Moses goes to get the 10 Commandments, and he climbs Mount Sinai. It takes him a few days to get up there and to get back. And when he gets back, the Israelites have totally forgotten their God, and they're worshiping a golden calf. And Moses gets pissed, and he throws down the 10 Commandments and breaks the tablets. And his people feel chastened, and they calm down. They quit like orgying and stuff. But Moses has to go back and get another copy of the 10 Commandments. And then they wander in the desert for another couple decades, I think. And then they come upon the land of milk and honey, which I don't know what if I forget the name for it in the Bible, but it's the place that God was finally going to fulfill all their dreams. But God says, not so fast, Moses, because you busted the 10 Commandments. You can't cross over the Jordan River, I think, into the Promised Land. you've lived, I don't know, 600 years, but you have to spend the rest of your life, just looking across the river at your people. And I feel a little bit like that with longevity science. I'd like to live, indefinitely. And there's a ton of longevity science that's going to happen in the next 10, 20, 50 years, so that people 30 years from now, they might get to live as long as they want, within reason. The world's foremost cheerleader for living forever, Ray Kurzweil, says you don't have to live forever. You only have to live long enough so that you're in a period where for every year you live, science is able to give you one more year. And that threshold is likely to be crossed in the next couple decades. But I don't know, the odds for any of us seniors or near seniors of getting across the threshold, I don't know, seem iffy. And that's one reason I was pissed at COVID, because COVID shut down a lot of stuff, including probably, science. If everybody's locked down at home, it probably threw a wrench in scientific progress. So COVID maybe cost us 18 months, 2 years in progress that could get me another 18 months or 2 years. So that's what I'm upset about, that we can see the future from here. And the future is people living for, probably the first people to live for 200 years are alive now, but they're probably younger than me. Jim, you're muted.
Thanks for telling me that. I just wanted to say, if anyone wants to correct our Bible study, info@airu.tv will accept your emails and corrections there. Although I don't have any corrections for you, Rick. It sounded pretty correct.
I'm just basing it on, I hated Sunday school. And, I've seen like part of the 10 Commandments, which is what, now 70 years old. It used to show up on TV and probably still does, but we don't watch that kind of TV anymore because we have 800 different shows to watch.
But what about mandating it in the schools? That's a thing now back in Louisiana, Texas, and states like that, I think.
Well, even a boring movie from 70 years ago, if it gets you out of class, then I could see as a kid being okay with that.
Sure.
But yeah, people overlook how bad Louisiana is in terms of all the indices of quality of life and their politics. When people think Louisiana, they think, laissez le bon temps rouler, and beads and boobs and getting drunk on
hurricanes,
Bourbon Street. Yeah. And but Louisiana's just a mess. They're 49th in everything. And and this is just one more thing. And then Oklahoma, that wants to teach the Bible, they're just, the guy in the superintendent of schools there is just a lunatic. And, we can be hopeful. I thought about doing like the current, political situation and the media's reaction, but I thought, that'll wait another week. Let's do one that isn't quite as miserable.
Well, the idea about adding to our lives, I think the Transhumanist Party has a platform about that, extending it through science, through technology. One of the things that I've always thought about that when I do think about this topic is that who's going to be able to afford that? Who's going to have access to it?
It's like everything. For the first year, it's insanely expensive, and only billionaire tech bros can afford it. And you got to think, that billionaire tech bros are secretly doing a ton of secret, research. And they're also doing lunatic stuff like paying teens to get their blood transfused into them, which is, it's maybe 10% science and 90% just like, we toured a museum yesterday, and we saw the Egyptians had like very complicated technology
Yes,
to live forever, and none of it worked
right.
because it was all ridiculous. And and I assume that teen blood transfusions is 90% Egyptian mummification.
Well, my mother-in-law was having some trouble with fatigue, and she got a blood transfusion. This probably after one of her pregnancies. I've forgotten the details, and she thought that she had gotten transferred with some Black Panther blood because she felt so much better afterwards. So you can make up anything to describe how you feel. Blood transfusions can be life-saving, but the idea that you're going to prolong your life because you got someone else's blood, I don't see any reason to believe in that.
Yeah, in the 1960s, you might have seen it on Mad Men. There were doctors, vitamin doctors, who'd come inject you with vitamin B, and you'd feel like a champ. You had so much energy. It turns out it wasn't the vitamin B. They also included, a big dose of speed in the shot.
Well, there you go. So, it's always when I'm back in the day when I used to take drugs, we had no idea what we were taking. We would call it something, but what was actually in it, we had no way of knowing.
Right.
And so, there's
the same way today that they stick fentanyl in everything.
Nowadays, that's so true. It's tragic what's happening now. And it's such a crisis throughout the United States. And probably other parts of the world that I haven't heard about so much. But, what is the attraction of that? Or is it just that they're taking something they think will make them feel better and fentanyl is laced into it? Or what?
Because it takes so little to give you a high off of fentanyl. A fatal dose is 2 micrograms.
Okay.
So
it's a small, tiny dose of it can kill you.
Right, but it's cheap because it takes such a small dose that people think they're just little fairy dusting to give like you a better buzz, but no, it's really a fatal dose. Because when I was a kid, when I was 20, I worked in a bar that there was a ton of cocaine flying around. It was Boulder, 1981, and there was this one kid who'd gotten a settlement and a lawsuit, and he decided to go into business as a coke dealer.
Okay.
And he ran through 50 grand within months, getting high on his own supply. And towards the end, he was really trying to, conserve his last few $1,000s. And so he kind of had me cutting the baby laxative into the coke to stretch it a little further because his hands were shaking
too much. Yeah.
But do you really want me in some crappy apartment, determining, what a 30% cut is? And I'm sciencey. So anybody else cutting, fentanyl into other stuff is going to be even crappier at it than I was.
And especially when the margin for error is so small.
Yeah. And so, but I'm sure it's just, it's a market force that you want your drug to be buzzy. Maybe, cocaine's expensive. So maybe if you stick a little fentanyl in, people won't notice that the coke is not doing anything for them because you've diluted it down to less than 20% cocaine. And, the drug business, maybe the people at the top aren't idiots, but I'm sure the percent of idiots, the further down the hierarchy you go, the percent idiots goes up.
And also when you're talking about people that are attracted to drug and drug use, along with the addiction crisis, there also seems to be a loneliness crisis. And I wonder if they go hand in hand. Do you think that could be a possibility that people
I think it's a possibility. There's certainly a coupling crisis that people are finding it are coupling up, forming couples and making babies less than ever before around the world. And my argument is that the world has become so entertaining that it's become easier to just sit in your own little cocoon and be entertained off of streaming and internet than it is to, like, pull your pants up and go out into the world and try to get laid.
We actually had to do that back in the day.
Yeah, we're part of the bar era, the singles bar era. You had to walk into a bar. You had, ideally with friends, and I didn't learn this till it was too late. That if you a single man walks into a bar, nobody wants to talk to him because everybody knows what he's there for, and he comes off as creepy. I was lucky enough to get jobs as a bouncer, which justified me being there, so I could occasionally hook up with somebody.
Okay. Yeah, I always went with friends, and there was always girls there in a bunch of, at least 3 of them together. And so that was the way that we would come into contact with one another. And there weren't really that many alternatives. So you take that away. For example, Saturday night, I know you didn't like TV in the 70s, but there was a Saturday night was like Archie Bunker, Mary Tyler Moore, Bob Newhart show. And then we went out. There were like 3 good shows in a row.
Yeah, I mean, the Saturday night has been a graveyard for network TV for 20, 30 years now.
Mm-hmm.
But back then there were some good Saturday nights. I remember when I was a little kid, there was Fantasy Island on ABC, followed by The Love Boat, and I liked those shows enough, but they also stung because I knew the popular people were not sitting at home on Saturday night.
Right. And I wasn't cruising anywhere, going to any islands anywhere.
But it's, I mean, a lot of people are on, most modern people are on the, on Tinder and all the hookup sites. But,
okay, yeah.
But it's still tough for people to hook up in a durable way.
Correct.
I think for a lot of people, it seems like the effort isn't worth it because coupling is hard.
And so why would that lead to you turning to drugs?
Well, I haven't seen a breakdown.
Okay.
I know a lot of people turn to deadly drugs because they've suffered an injury and they were given opioids that are extremely effective, but extremely addictive. I mean, they've made like, I don't know how many docs and how many dramatizations. True. Like, I think everybody knows that that's where a lot of addiction comes
Absolutely. Over subscribing of painkillers. I personally know, and you probably personally know somebody, he had a hernia operation and then got pain pills and then got the access to them suddenly stopped. And he couldn't get them. He couldn't afford them on the streets. So he turned to heroin, which is cheaper.
And, and probably people turn to fentanyl too, which is, I assume, even cheaper than that.
And that may be one of the explanations for it. And, it's one of the joys of my life to see somebody that was, good guy and just got taken down by addiction, and to see him climb his way back up and be, happy again, leading a life of true happiness, where he feels good about himself and what his contributions to society are after he was pushing a shopping cart.
Yeah. So in the U.S., opioids kill about 100,000 people a year, which is on a par with COVID. And COVID has been the deadliest event in U.S. history. So, if the probably opioids you could argue might be the deadliest event, or might become if you consider, the whole, decade, 2 decades of opioid deaths as a single event. Right. But it's a steady drumbeat of death.
Right. And, our policies don't seem to be addressing the issue on the national level. And one of the things that we have to get away is the shaming aspect of people that are addicted. Because as you pointed out, you can get drugs to help you cope with pain, and then you can become an addict without knowing it, without meaning to go down that road. And it's not a question of willpower. It's a question.
Well, there's also the limited I mean, the only way to have any chance of helping people, as far as I know, is putting them in rehab. And there just aren't enough slots.
Right.
And or enough money to pay for. I've heard, and I don't know if this is true or not, but like LA has 73,000 homeless people according to the latest count. They go out and try to count everybody, which is second in the nation to New York City. But I've heard that one source of all these homeless people is that the drug rehab places will advertise. LA drug places, Malibu, will advertise in Ohio, and that there are funds available. So to get them out here, that, you know, some state agency is paying to get them out here, and they go to rehab and they're fixed, and then they're just kicked out, and nobody's paying for the return ticket. So they're on this street here in Los Angeles, and they eventually revert.
Right.
I don't know if that is true, but it seems plausible.
Well, even if it's not true, there's enough of the real things going on that are causing people to experience temporary success with rehab, and then what we call relapse. And the idea of even getting someone into rehab, that's a real struggle sometimes, because they associate it with shame that they failed somehow. But it's absolutely what some people absolutely need. And they're not going to get better without it. But other people, I always say, you know, what works for me might not work for you, and vice versa. Different people need different things. You know, some people can do it with just the companionship of others that are in the same boat can help you. And I find that finding a community of supporters has been the one consistent thing in all the programs that I have been advised of or participated in myself. Whether you find somebody that can be there when you feel squirrely and you pick up a call and someone's not judging you, they're understanding you and they're nodding their head along with you. That seems to be the ticket for success for so many of us.
Also, like, you hear a zillion stories about the first rehab didn't work, the second time, the third time, it was the fourth time.
That is also a story I hear often. Yes. So never give up.
It's what, 30 grand, 40 grand every time.
Well, some of these places, there's no question. And this is one of the things that, you know, really try to pay a lot of attention to, but it's very difficult to find the people that are trying to make money and the people that are trying to help, you know, and often it's hard to tell who's who, which one's
probably the people themselves get confused.
Well, it's awfully true, but you know, there are some programs that are, you know, 501c3s. They're not for profit. Nobody's getting rich. You know, these are that's the kind of thing that I look for. You know, are they a charity? Are they a not for profit? You know, do they have a 501c3 tax status? That's what that means. And so they can't easily generate money for themselves. They have to have some justification for their salary, for example, if there is a salary. Many of these people, places are volunteer led. So that's another thing I look for. But before you recommend it, you have to do some due diligence.
Yeah. I imagine a future where, you know, because people aren't coupling up and making babies, like, we're going to become more and more like Japan, where, you know, robots pick up some of the slack in elder care. Yeah. But I can imagine as the technology gets better, that maybe, you know, homeless and people who are in danger of ODing or relapsing, they get their little robotic guardian angel that kind of follows them around. And, you know, the little, you know, the angels, the rope, they get beaten up because people get pissed at them. They throw them into traffic. But, you know, will that be a workable future? I don't know.
Yeah, that's very interesting. With that, I think I'm going to say goodbye to you and thank you for coming on and sharing what's agitating you and how you're dealing with it. It's very important. We got on a topic that's near and dear to my heart. Always appreciate seeing you, Rick. And so I'll talk to you later.
Thanks for letting me come on.
You bet. Bye. Okay, that was Rick Rosner, senior correspondent from LA. Rick is a writer, a dumbass genius by his own description, and a former writer for Jimmy Fallon. We really appreciate him coming on into, let's see, I've got this there. Calm Down with James Eade. In case you wanted to know how to reach us, you can reach us by writing an email to that address, scrolling across the bottom of your screen. But I'm James Eade, and I'm saying goodbye to you right now. Welcome to this segment of Calm Down with James Eade. I'm James Eade, and this segment is about yamas and niyamas. And we've talked about them each week, and this is the fourth week, I think, that we're going to talk about them. Maybe we're going to talk about non-stealing this week, but Yudhisthira is my yoga instructor, and I'm going to bring him on now. And you're going to talk about, pronounce the non-stealing yama for me?
Well, in Sanskrit, it's called asteya.
Asteya.
Obviously, that's not truly Sanskrit. That's Sanskrit made into English.
Gotcha.
And well, I'll talk about it in just a minute. But I mean, it's a challenging one for a lot of us to get to as a practice.
Mm-hmm.
But once you begin to practice it, the idea becomes very clear as you become aware of what's going on within us, that really falls under the category of non-stealing or non-coveting.
Thou shalt not covet. Yes. Okay. Yes. Bringing that back full circle to my religious upbringing.
Well, and I'll mention that as well, because clearly it rings a bell for a lot of folks from their early days in churches.
Right. Okay. Well, you're in good hands, viewers, and I'm going to leave you with Yudhisthira.
Good morning, friends. Let me start my timer so I don't go on forever. I've asked Jim to put up this diagram because all of these teachings of yoga are really, really enhanced by some big, basic ideas. And once those big ideas are understood, at least in general terms, it helps in terms of putting into practice the individual yamas and niyamas in our case. And let me give you a couple examples of these big background understandings. For example, the chakras. Understanding chakras, not the fluffy surface layer stuff that has become popular and sort of overused. Karma and reincarnation is another. So chakras, karma and reincarnation, levels of consciousness. I've mentioned this before: subconscious, conscious, and then the superconscious awareness is really the essence of who we are. But we become so aware of the other two. So these are all big examples, and I want to include a fourth one today, which is called the Yuga cycle. The Yuga cycle is important, and again, there's a small graphic of it there, and I don't know if you can see it on this graphic or not. Jim is going to be able to share a link with anybody who's interested. But this is a Yuga cycle, and it is a cycle that travels through 24,000 years and is related to where our sun and our solar system is relative to the center of our galaxy. And we become, that is, as a planet, we become more open to enlightenment as we get closer to this galactic source. As we get further away, knowledge becomes lost, and eventually we're dealing with almost exclusively a material world. To make clear, great prophets, great teachers, great gurus, divine beings can make a human appearance at any one of these levels, but their teaching will always end up reflecting, oh, that's even better, will always end up reflecting the age in which they are. For example, Jesus was a fully realized yoga master. That's how it's viewed within the world of yoga. Yet his lifetime was during this black period called Kali Yuga. And so his teaching was put out in terms that would be understood by people living in a time who were dealing with the material world in order to survive. And as we are now moving out of that period, and you can see where on that chart it shows present, we are beginning to move upward towards an age of enlightenment. The challenge we face is that there are many powerful tools that we have that are energy related. Dwapara Yuga, Dwa means two, second, and it is an age of energy. It began to kick in around 1700, and you can see what happened from 1700 to the year 2000. And it was this huge advancement in terms of our understanding of energy, from the steam engine to internal combustion engines to quantum physics. And so it was huge. And yet the consciousness of many of our people on the planet, including many of our leaders around the globe, are still in this material world. So they have these powerful tools, but a very dark material level of consciousness. So it can be a challenge. There's a lot more to this document, but the last thing I want to say about it, because I want to get into our practice of non-stealing and relate it to this is not simply a circle that goes round and round. It is a spiral that goes through ages, and every age is an increasing level of awareness as well. So it's not a two-dimensional sort of thing, but rather multidimensional. Obviously, time is a factor as well. So one could even say more. So let's go ahead and get rid of that image. And again, if any of you want to have that document, Jim will have the link for you to go to. And the practice today is that of non-stealing. Jim and I were talking about this a little bit beforehand, and it can, just the term non-stealing can evoke a particular, almost a gut reaction, because of the fact that the Ten Commandments are so fundamental to all three Abrahamic religions, Islam, Judaism, and Christianity. And what I mean is that there is because those teachings came from a time when knowledge was being rapidly lost. And in order for knowledge to be secured, it had to be put in a very compact, concrete, practicable form that related to the world around it, around the people who were getting the teaching. So you get Moses, he comes out with the Ten Commandments, and one of them, I forget where it lands, I think it's number 6, is non-stealing. And he talks about not coveting your wife, not coveting your neighbor's house, not coveting. It's very, very Old Testament. And it's not wrong. It's simply that it doesn't naturally lead itself to the deeper expression of what is called asteya, or non-stealing or non-coveting, non-possessiveness, which is the yoga teaching. And in yoga, it's expanded, it's made so much bigger. And so it's helpful to understand in that picture of the yugas that we're in an age when, if we are inclined to move away from the delusion of the material world, that we can begin through our own efforts to raise our consciousness. And asteya, non-stealing, actually begins at a very material level. It's true. Anybody who's ever stolen anything, I'll bet each of us can give an example from our childhood. I have a clear memory of going to a corner grocery store and wanting the candy that I didn't have the money to buy, and literally stealing some. I think I got caught. Ended up being the best thing for me. But this idea about being caught is an important component because it holds us accountable. I'll tell you that at one point while I was running a Ananda Center over in Scotts Valley, it was a beautiful center. We had a lot of technical things there, a certain amount of cash, and it was a thriving business at one point. until the pandemic. And but at one point we had a break-in, and stuff was stolen, computers were stolen, money was stolen, and we could see how they got in. And it was an interesting thing because my first reaction was to put out on Facebook, on our website, on those things, to put out a request for people to pray for the people who had taken the stuff to the thieves. And my friend and spiritual guide, Joe Tish, who is one of the spiritual directors of Ananda Worldwide, he gave me a correction that was perfect. He said, by all means, pray that these people be blessed and pray that they be caught, because in that way they may have the option of recognizing what they got wrong. And so being accountable for the things that we want that are not ours, when we actually follow through on it in a physical way, is great. And I want to expand it from material things, but material things offer a great example. For example, if I am walking down the street, I was telling Jim this earlier, I do love automobiles. They're fascinating to me. And, I really enjoy reading about them, knowing about them, their power plants, where they're produced, their special features, things like this. And I really would like to have one of them for about this long, because when I actually buy a car of my own, it ends up being a pretty simple car. I think I've had 3 Priuses along the way. And right now I have a Chevy Bolt. It's about as simple of a car as you can get. And so what that points to is the fact that there's nothing wrong with enjoying the things that are out there in the world. The problem comes when you think that your happiness will be increased by acquiring them. I have some notes here. I want to make sure I don't get too far off track. So in the Abrahamic religions, we have this commandment, thou shalt not steal. Well, that's basically the fundamental principle in yoga as well. However, in yoga, it naturally extends into the thoughts that we have. So that thought that I have sometimes that, boy, that's a great car, could easily become, if I only save up and buy it, then I will actually have it and I will be happier. What would happen is then I would have to maintain that car and it would become a burden, not a blessing. This is one of the great teachings about non-stealing, that what we think will make us happy will end up becoming a burden rather than a blessing. So how do we practice non-stealing? Well, certainly outwardly, we don't take things that aren't ours. But we also have to begin to notice the thoughts in our mind. And when those thoughts in our mind stray into the area of wanting something that is not rightfully ours, understand it can be wealth, it can be a particular relationship or partner. It can even move into the level of spiritual awareness, wanting a level of spiritual elevation that I have not rightfully earned. And yet I have this false idea that if I were to somehow act as if it's rightfully mine, which in time it might be, then I would be able to be spiritually uplifted. It doesn't work that way. You need to go through the work of disconnecting yourself from the desire in your mind. And spiritually speaking, we move down, and this is a recurring theme in yamas and niyamas, into the heart. The second Yoga Sutra, I'll come back to it many times because it is so fundamental, is Yoga's Chitta Vritti Nirodha. Yoga calms the waves of likes and dislikes, desires and fears that abide both in the heart and the mind. Be clear that the mind follows the heart. All you have to do is watch someone who really wants something to come out the way they want it to, and we are all doing this, by the way, on a regular basis, that we can then justify with a rational process what our hearts desire. So the secret to non-stealing is to make sure that we are not looking for something that is not ours. And so I want to wrap up today and read two things for you. One is from a book called Demystifying Patanjali. I've probably shown this to you before. And on this quality of non-covetousness, Swami Kriyananda, the founder of Ananda Worldwide and a direct disciple of Paramahansa Yogananda, he says this: non-covetousness means not to want anything that isn't yours already. Enjoy things, but without personal attachment. Don't send out grappling irons to them from your heart, the hooks of ego. And then from this book, Affirmations for Self-Healing. If you notice the quality of greed or the desire for something that is not yours rightfully come into your consciousness, you become aware of it, how do you then deal with it? What do you do? One of the best ways to counter the desire for something other than what is rightfully yours is to give away things as they come to you. So I wanted to end by reading to you from Affirmations for Self-Healing on the quality of generosity, and we'll end with the affirmation that goes along with it. Swami Kriyananda writes that most people think of generosity as merely the giving of material benefits to others. More important, however, and much more satisfying, is a generous spirit, a willingness to let the other person shine, even if it means being eclipsed oneself, a happiness in his good fortune, even if it means personal loss for oneself, a concern for his safety, even if in an accident, one's own property has been destroyed. Generosity means, above all, recognizing that everything that we have and are belongs to God alone, and is his or hers to dispose of as she wills. So there's no way to possibly compact everything about any of these yamas and niyamas into a single short period of time, but at least it will get you started. If you want more information on the yugas, again, the link is one that Jim has, and I'm happy to share that document with you. It has a lot of information on it. So blessings and joy, and I will see you next week.
Welcome to the final segment of Calm Down. And I want to introduce to you, my loyal listeners and viewers, Divya Lovewise, that wise yogi. And I would like you, at the end of every show, I'm a little bit agitated and worked up and all that kind of stuff. And I was wondering if there's something that you could do to calm me down. Could you just say goodbye to us in any way that you see fit?
Sure, I would love to.
I will take off and let you do that. Thanks again.
Okay. Well, bring yourself into a comfortable seated position, feeling your feet on the floor and letting your hands rest in your lap. Palms up or palms down is a great way to start bringing yourself back into center and focus with your own divine energy and letting go of anything that might have wanted to stick to us throughout the day that may be energy we don't want to carry throughout the day. So having this basic position feeling grounded, even closing your eyes and taking a deep breath in through the nose and out through the mouth. And one of the ways we can bring ourselves back to center is observing with our senses what we can feel, the temperature of the air in the room, observing any sounds that you hear. Noticing any smells in the air. And then bring your awareness to your breath. As though you're watching it from the inside out. Watching the inhale wash into the body. And watching the exhale wash out of the body. Just like the waves of the ocean as they wash onto the shore. And if you find your mind still wandering, you can even place one hand on your lower belly and one hand on your heart, so that you can feel with your hands this breath washing in and washing out. And with your mind's eye, visualize this inhalation and exhalation as an internal shower, clearing away your energy so that it's refreshed, it's rejuvenated, and it's restored. Releasing your hands into your lap, just give yourself a few seconds of pause in this return to peace, enjoying it. When you are ready, you can open your eyes, wiggling your fingers and your toes, feeling grounded in your body, grounded in the best part of yourself, and you can go out into the world and carry that best part in the forefront of your mind and your heart.